Hello, welcome to The Widow's Mite. My name is Stephanie Wright, your hostess for The Widow's Mite. The Widow's Mite is a series of interviews of some extraordinary women who have agreed to share their story about how they transitioned from being a wife to being a widow. You will cry, you will laugh, but most of all, you will be informed. This series is not only for women who are widows, but it is for wives, it is for men, it is for anyone who wants to help someone who is a widow. Come with us as we go on this amazing journey and learn about life, love, loss, and the will to continue on. We are going into the widow's mite. Thank you.
My name is Carmalita Robinson, and I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. I would say that we grew up in Pruitt-Igoe projects. That's where our life really started there. I attended Blewett Elementary School, and after that graduated and went to Sumner High School. Graduated from Sumner in 1969. From day one, when anybody would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would always say a nurse. Just saying a nurse wasn't enough. I needed to find out what kind of nurse. So I decided to go to the library, and I went to the career section. And this woman showed me this huge book, and it had careers. And so I looked up nurses. And I wanted to be a nurse that could travel around the world and be able to work. And so, needless to say, I fell upon registered nurse. And after I researched that, and I decided that's what I want to be, a registered nurse. So upon entering high school, I met with my career counselor and told her that's what I wanted to be, a registered nurse. And of course, my whole school year was always structured into going into nursing. So I applied, the senior year, I applied to go to, at that time it was called Homer G. Phillips School of Nursing, but they had changed it to Municipal School of Nursing. So I went, got all the information I needed, did my entry exam, filled out all my paperwork, set up my own loan because I knew my mother and father could not pay for me to go to school. Then the next thing was, do you want to stay on campus or stay at home? I always wanted to be on campus because I wanted to be around people that had the same goal I had. So I moved out of the house and moved onto campus. My first month away from home, I cried myself silly. I mean, I cried and cried. All I had to do was get on the bus and go home. Bus ride was maybe about 10 minutes, but I was determined to stay on campus and learn how to be a young woman that could think for herself and do those things that she really wanted to do in life. So I stayed on campus. At that time I was dating this young man. I don't even know if I want to say that. Anyway, I was dating.
We'll stop there.
So I met Joe Robinson my junior year in nursing school. I happened to be out on the steps studying with some of my girlfriends, and some guy came by and he was making all these remarks. So I got up, gathered up all my books, and I started walking back into the building. As I'm walking, I hear someone say, "Hey, hey, you." I knew my name was not "Hey, hey, you," so I kept on walking. And then I hear someone say, "I'm talking about you with the yellow thighs." Needless to say, at that time I had on some hot pants and a halter, the way my mom had told me not to dress. And I stopped, and my girlfriend said, "Carmelita, it's a policeman, and he's talking to you." I thought, oh my God, I'm getting ready to get arrested. So I turned around, and this policeman is sitting in his vehicle, and he motioned, "Come here." So I gave my girlfriend my books. I said, "If he arrests me, call my mama." So I walked down, and I stood there, and I looked at him, and I said, "Yes." He says, "Come around and get in the car." I knew I was going to be arrested then. So I came around. He opened the door. I got in and sat down. He asked me what was I doing out on the steps, and I told him my girlfriends and I, we were studying because we had exams coming up, and so we were studying, and some guy came by in a truck and was making all these little remarks. So I was going inside. He says, "Oh," asked me, of course, my name. I told him my name was Carmalita, at that time, Carmalita Wright. And he proceeds to tell me his life story. That his name was Joseph M. Robinson, better known as the Duke. And I thought, ooh, the Duke. He's got the name of a dog, because we had a German Shepherd named Duke. So I, of course, was like, oh, he's got the name of a dog. I didn't think about Duke as royalty. And he told me about his life from the time he moved from Mississippi, and being in school, just the whole 9 yards. This man is telling me his whole life. I'm sitting there trying not to be interested in him. And I finally kind of turned a little bit so I could look at him. And I thought, oh my God, this man is huge. Because I was weighing maybe about 100 pounds at that time. And after we had this, well, wasn't we, it was him that was doing all the talking. After he tells me his whole life story, he tells me that I can go. And I looked at him, I said, "What?" He said, "You can leave. You can get out of the car and leave." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I get out of the car, and he calls me back. "Hey, by the way." And I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm going to marry you." Of course, that was humorous to me. I started laughing at him. He never budged, he never blinked, he never wavered. Told me, "I'll see you later." I walked on over to my girlfriends, and we're laughing, and they're like, "What did he want?" I said, "Oh, he just told me his whole life story," and then talking about, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to marry you." And we fell out laughing, and we let him know we were laughing at him because we pointed at him and started laughing. He never swayed in his stance. Started up his car, and he pulled off. Needless to say, this man called me asking for a date. I told him no. He asked me why. And I told him, oh, I had some demerits. I was grounded, had to stay at school. He called me again. I was studying for finals. Didn't have time. Called me again. I think I put him off maybe about 5 or 6 times. And I guess he said enough is enough. So the last time he called me, he says, "Okay, I'm picking you up at 7 o'clock. Be ready. When I get there, be downstairs in the lobby." And I thought to myself, who does he think he is talking to? So I go back to my dorm room, and my roommate, she's like, "Was that policeman again?" I said, "Yes." "What did he want?" I said, "Telling me I better be ready for my date at 7 o'clock, or else he's coming up to the room telling me he's a cop. He can go anywhere he wants in the building." And my girlfriend runs to my closet, and she starts going through my clothes. "You want to wear this? You want to wear this? How about these pants? How about this dress?" And I'm like, I'm not going out with him. He's just going to come, and I'll tell him goodbye. She said, "Niecy," that's my nickname, "Niecy, that man cannot come up here on this floor to our room." I said, "Why not, killer?" That was my roommate. She was a little bitty thing, and so her nickname was Killer. I said, why not? And she said, he just can't come up here. And I said, why? Needless to say, she lifts up the skirt on her bed, and my girlfriend has liquor stashed all up under her bed. It is just stashed. And I'm like, oh my God, how did you get away with stashing this liquor? They do room checks. She said she had an inside man that would tell her when they were going to do the random room checks, so she would move her liquor around. Anyway, I am fussing, and she says, girl, hurry up and get dressed. It's 6:15. So I grab everything, I run, get my shower, come back, and I get myself dressed, and I'm steady fussing about, I don't want to go out with this man. She looked at her watch, and she says to me, Niecy, it's 5 minutes to 7. I broke out of that room, and I'm running. I had 4 flights to run down. And I'm running down 4 flights of stairs, and when I got to this balcony landing, I stopped and took a deep breath trying to get my bearings because I didn't want him to know I had run down 4 flights of stairs. And just as I'm starting down the stairs, he's walking in. And he's talking to my dorm mom. And I walked on downstairs and spoke to him. He barely looked at me and said good evening. Then tells me, oh, turn around. I said, what? He said, turn around, let me look at you. So I turned around. He said, yeah, you look okay. And I thought, oh. Anyway, I go to sign out because we had to sign in and out. I go to sign out, and my dorm mom says, oh, are you going out with this young man? I said, yes, I am. She tells me very nicely, you don't need to sign out. You'll be safe. I'm like, do you know him? And she said, he comes and talks to me every evening. So he had already etched his little life into my dorm mom's heart. So we go out and everything. I ended up meeting his sister-in-law and some of his nephews that evening. And we ended up going to the drive-in. And he was very, 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 very pleasant. Very nice young man. He made you feel very comfortable being with him. I didn't feel bound like I had to act a certain way or anything. I was very comfortable with him. And so needless to say, one date led to another date, and I thought to myself, well, I'm not really interested in this man, so I'm just going to date him for a little while and then send him on his merry way. So I decided, how can I get rid of him? So I decided I would let him meet my brothers. My brothers Charles, Johnny, and Alexander. And I figured my brothers would run him away. So I invite him over to the house to meet my brothers. I go upstairs and I'm with my sister. And they're down there. I hear them laughing and talking and everything. And when I get downstairs and he leaves, I tell him, I'll see you later. Bye, bye, bye. I asked my brothers, I said, what do you think? And they were all, we like this guy. I thought, no, you're not supposed to like him. You're not supposed to like him. You're supposed to get rid of him. And they were like, why? He seems to be a very nice man. Why don't you date him for a little while, get to know him? I thought, okay, I know what? My mama. I'll let him meet my mama. So I invite him back. And I went to pick him up because I was driving his car at the time. I went to pick him up. And he comes out of the room and he has on a vest. Just a vest and some pants. And I asked him, I said, where's your shirt? He said, no, I'm going just like this. I'm not going to wear a shirt. I'm going just like this. I said, that's not going to work. And I thought, oop, be quiet. Mom will get rid of him for you. I said, okay. So we get to the house. My mother's very pleasant, very polite. She sits and talks to him, and they're having a nice conversation. And we decided we're going to dinner. So we get up and leave. On the way out the door, she tells him, go ahead, go on, she'll be out. My mother caught me by the arm and turned me around. She said, listen, one thing, you tell that young man next time he comes back to my house, put on some clothes. Don't come to my house with just a vest on, no shirt. And I thought, she doesn't like him. So we get in the car and I tell him this. And he just looked, he said, oh, okay, all right. And I just knew, I said, now on the second one, my mom's going to say, leave him alone. My mother met him the second time, and they sat and talked for quite a while. Come to find out, my mother thought he was very pleasant, and she really liked him. I'm like, oh my God, you all are not supposed to like him. I want to get rid of this man. You guys are supposed to help me get rid of him. And my mother is laughing. She said, okay. So I had started dating this man for, I want to say maybe almost a year, because it was my senior year in nursing school. And I decided he needs to meet my daddy. So this particular summer, I was working at Homer G. Phillips Hospital. And I told him, meet me at the house. And we go from there. So when I got home, his car was there. I walked on in the house. He was not in the living room, wasn't in the dining room. My mom was in the kitchen. And I said, Mom, I see Joe's car, but he's not in the living room, dining room, and he's not in the kitchen with you. Where is he? She says to me, he's upstairs on the second floor. And one thing you had to understand, the rule in my house, especially with my father, no man puts his foot on the first step leading upstairs to the second floor. On the second floor was my father's room and his den, my mother's bedroom, and mine and my sister's room. So no man was to go up on that second floor. And when she told me that, I started up the steps real quietly. And I got to my father's door, which was closed, and I heard all this laughing and talking, and they were having a... And I knocked, and my father says, yeah, come on in. And I opened the door, and my father is smoking his cigar. Joe at that time smoked, and he's smoking a cigarette. And I said, Daddy? He told me, oh, come on in, baby, come on in. I said, girl, I like this boy. I thought, oh, Lord Jesus, Daddy, you're not supposed to like him. So Joe and I had a date. My father is in love with Joe. I get dressed and we leave. And as I'm walking down the stairs, my father caught me by my arm and he says, little girl. And I turned, I said, yes, sir. He said, this is a man. And I said, yes, sir, I know it. And I was going to leave. He caught me again, turned me around. He said, little girl, this is a man. Now, this man wants to get married. This man wants to have a family. And if that is not what you are looking for and wanting right now, leave this man alone. And I figured, Carmalita, you really need to think about this. And I told my father, yes, sir. So we went out on a date, enjoyed ourselves, and Joe decided to come back that Saturday morning. He called me and he says, we're going to go out to breakfast. I thought, okay. And so he picks me up about 7 o'clock in the morning, and we head over into Illinois, at Sauget, Illinois. It was a downtown airport. And we get there, and he tells me, walks me into the lobby, and tells me to have a seat. He'll be right back. He comes out, and he says, come on, let's go. And I thought, okay, so where are we eating? He proceeds out on the tarmac, and there's an airplane. He gets in, he helps me in, and we have a seat. I'm trying not to act all excited and, And I said, where are we going? He said, I think we're probably going to fly around a little bit, and then we'll go to breakfast. So he takes off. I'm very calm, and I'm looking around, enjoying myself. So I think we flew to Jefferson City and had breakfast. Flew around a little bit more after breakfast and ended up somewhere else for lunch. And it ended up I was gone all day up until in the evening for dinner. So after dinner, it is a evening flight. It's dark outside and everything. And so we take off. And he says, I want you to see something. So he flies me all downtown where it's all lit up and it's absolutely gorgeous and it's beautiful. And I'm thinking to myself, who is this man? Because he is a pilot. So after we land and everything, and I tell him I had a beautiful day, and he looks at me, he says, okay, so you had a beautiful day. What do you think? I said, I had a good time, thank you. We get in the car. He says, have you ever been flying before? I said, yeah, in a big airplane, commercial airplane. Well, do you know any pilots? I said, no, I don't know any pilots. And so my flying you around did not excite you. And I got tickled. I got tickled. And I began, of course, to be sarcastic. I said, oh, I'm excited. I'm excited. Oh. Which made him mad. Made him mad. But inwardly, I was totally excited. I thought, oh my God, this man is a pilot. He flies all around and everything, you know. And so I was excited about it. I get home. My mother is having a fit because I've been gone all day from 7 o'clock in the morning till about 8 o'clock at night. My mom said, where have you been? I said, oh, I've been to Jefferson City, I think to Springfield and somewhere else. And she said, wait a minute. How did you all drive that fast to these different locations? And I said, oh, we didn't drive, Mom. She said, well, how did you get there? I said, oh, we were in an airplane. He's a pilot and he flies. My mother grasps her chest and she's like, oh my God, oh my God. I said, Mom, I'm back, I'm safe, everything is fine. So I had a chance to lay across that bed and think about it, and I thought to myself, I don't know if I still like this man. So I just decided I would just wait. Of course, I had to take my finals, go to Jefferson City and take state boards and all this stuff. I didn't want to bother my mom and dad about it, but I was telling Joe that I had to go. And he says, well, how are you getting there? I said, well, we're going on a bus. He says, okay. He said, how much does it cost to go? And so I told him. He said, what about your room? I told him about that and everything. And the next thing I know, this man comes back to my dormitory. He hands me this envelope. And it is to pay for everything. My room, my licensing, dinner and everything. He paid for the whole weekend. And my girlfriend, I called her Miss Maddie. Her name was Matilda. We're sitting there and she's like, Carmalita, have you paid for everything? I said, yeah. She said, you don't work. You've never worked since you've been in school. Did your mother and father pay for it? And I told her, no. She said, well, where'd you get the money from? Me, I was always very upfront, forthright. Didn't know how women really thought because I'd never really been exposed to a bunch of women. All my friends were guys. And so I told her, I said, well, Joe paid for it. She said, wait, Joe paid for everything? I said, yeah. And I was through with the conversation. So it ended up, we were out on a double date. Joe and her guy, you know, we're out. And we're sitting there talking, and her boyfriend says, so Joe, I understand you paid for Carmalita to go to Jefferson City. And he said, yeah. He said, well, Matilda asked me to pay for hers also. And his comment to her was, if you want everything to be paid for your weekend to do state boards, then you need to be with Joe Robinson. And I was embarrassed. I was flabbergasted. I didn't know what to say. I just excused myself and went to the ladies' room to take a deep breath and think about this. And Matilda comes in behind me, and I turned to her and I said, why would you tell your boyfriend that Joe was paying for me? She said, because I feel like if he's my boyfriend, he ought to be just like Joe and pay for everything. I said, well, your boyfriend is not Joe Robinson, so I don't know how you're going to do this, but please don't ever do that again. So, of course, that date was over with, and I thought, I don't even like her boyfriend. I didn't like him. Okay, I'm sorry. But I didn't like him. And needless to say, I never double dated with her again. So I went on, did my state boards and everything. Joe Robinson now figures I've graduated. I am getting ready to start my career into nursing, and he wants to get married. So he asked me to marry him. And without hesitation, without forethought, I said no. He looked at me, he said, "What?" I said, "No." He asked me again later on. I said no. I think Joe asked me maybe about 3 or 4 times, and each answer was no. My answer to him was, I'm young, I want to live, I want to travel, I want to see the world. So my plans were to join the Navy. I remember I got that application for the Navy and I had filled it out and I had put everything right at the door. So when I get ready to leave, I could pick it up and take it with me. So I'm at home. I have filled out my application, put everything there. I get ready to leave that morning and I look and there is a pile of little pieces of paper, ripped to pieces. My mother had torn up my application to go into the Navy. I didn't have time to fuss with her. I had to get to work. So out the door I go, I bring home another application. I fill that out. Each time I brought one home, my mother was ripping it up. So I thought, I need to talk to her. So I went to her and I said, "Mom, we need to talk. Why do you keep ripping up my applications? I told you, I want to join the Navy. I want to travel. The Navy will help finish educating me, and I'll be happy." My mother looked, she says, "Oh, so you want to join the Navy? You want to travel the world?" I said, "Yes." From port to port. I said, "Yes." And my mother says to me, "Oh, so you intend to be an international whore." I was so outdone. I took a deep breath and I thought, did my mama just call me a whore? And I thought, she got up and walked away. I was hurt. I was stunned. I had all these mixed emotions. And I thought to myself, she raised me. She should know me better than that. But I guess my mother knew me better than I knew myself. I don't know. But I was not like that. And so needless to say, I thought about it. I said, okay, I'll forget about the Navy because I don't want my mom upset. So here we are back with Mr. Joe Robinson. And he says to me, "Why won't you marry me?" And I had to come clean with, I was scared. I was just scared. I didn't want to get married. I was young. And during this period of time, my mother had fallen ill, had to have surgery. And I was her nurse during the whole period that she was ill, had her surgery, was going through recovery and everything. And my mother knew she was dying. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Mm.
I told you it would get emotional, didn't I?
Yeah.
That's okay. I stopped the camera.
So my mother knew that she was getting ready to pass on. And the nurses came to me and said, "Carmalita, it's okay. You can take your mom home." So I notified the family, told them that mother was coming home. And she gets out of the car, and my brother-in-law, Willie, and Joe, we were still dating, Joe, they're walking her in the house. And I reached in to get her bags. And when I reached in to get her bags, I turned and looked at her back. And I gasped. And my sisters were like, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh my God, mother came home to die." Of course, they got upset. "Don't say that. Don't say that." I said, "Yes, this is her dream home. And she had always said she wanted to die in her dream home." So after that, we get her home. She wasn't able to even go up to the second floor. So we moved everything down and moved her into the Huge living room. That living room was so huge. So we moved her there. And I told my sister, let her rest this evening, and then tomorrow morning just give her something soft to eat, blah, go through the whole nursing thing. So I go on to work. My sister, I think my mother was home maybe about a week. This particular day, I went on to work, and I got to work, hadn't been there very long. My sister called, and she said, I need you to come home. Mother is breathing funny. I tried to be very calm with her on the phone because I didn't want to upset her. I said, okay. I said, I'll come on home and check her, and I'll be there in a few minutes. Of course, when I hung up, I pulled off their nursing cap. I told them I have to leave. Everybody knew. All the nurses on the floor knew. So I'm running down these stairs. I called Joe to come and get me. It seemed like it took him for years and years to get there. Oh, but let me back up a little bit before this. My mother made plans while she was still in the hospital. She wanted to see each one of her children and talk to them. This particular day, she told me, when you get off work, I want you to come back because I need to talk to you. And I thought, okay. And so I go home, I get cleaned up, and I come back that evening to talk with my mom. And nobody is there but me and her. And she says to me, Sugar, this man that you're dating, Joe Robinson, do you intend to marry him? And I told her no. And she looked down, she said, no. I said, no, ma'am, I don't intend to marry. She said, okay, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. She said, do you remember when you were 16, went to prayer and Bible band on Wednesdays? These old mothers, such wisdom. They said all the young ladies, and we had to be in our teens, some of them early 20s, they set us all on the front row. And they're handing us out pieces of paper, and they give us pencils. And they say to us, what we're giving you is paper. We want you to write down what you would want in a husband. I thought to myself, I think I was 16. I'm thinking, a husband? I'm 16 years old. And they said, yeah, you might be young. You may not be thinking about getting married now, but you have an idea of what you want in a man. I'm thinking again, what I want in a man? I don't even know what I want out of my own self other than to be a nurse. This woman is repeating everything I'm saying, and I had to ask my girlfriend. I said, did I say that out loud? She said, no. But she is repeating everything that I am saying. She said, so I want you to take a moment and write down everything you think you would want in a husband. So I contemplated and I said, well, for one thing, he would have to be older than me. I don't want anybody my age because men my age to me seemed to be silly, didn't know what they wanted in life or anything. So my man had to be older than me. So I put on there, must be older than me. No children. Why I said no children? Because I felt that if he had children, his obligation was to those children. And that's who he was to take care of. Not me, but those children. So I didn't want him to have any children. Then I thought, must love me and me alone. Then I put on there that whether I wanted to work or not, that he would be able to take care of me whether I was working or staying at home. Then I put on there that he had to be born again. That was one thing I wanted. Why did I want him to be born again? Because I knew that God could lead and guide him and teach him how to take care of me and how to treat me. So I know it was about six things. I know it was 6 things I had written down. Anyway, my mom asked me if I still had that list, and I told her no, but I knew that list. It was in my head. That list was also in my mom's head because after I had written it, she came up behind me and asked me, let me see your list. So I showed it to her, and she gave it back to me. So my mom knew the list. So once we had this discussion, and she said, "Is he not everything you put on your list?" And I said, "No." She said, "He's not? What's missing?" I said, "Mom, he's not saved. He has not given his life to Christ. So, no." And she laughed and said, "Well, neither are you." And I told her exactly. I said, "But I want him to be saved." And she chuckled and she said, "Okay." And that was the end of the conversation. But I knew my mom. I knew my mom was going to be praying. That was a praying woman. So it ends up that weekend, Joe and I went out. We get into an argument. I don't even know what the argument is about to this day. You could put my fire to my feet. I still can't tell you what the argument was about. We are out with some friends. We have to leave because we're really getting loud at this lounge. And we come home. I was not the type of person to really argue. So he is just arguing and arguing and arguing. And we get home. And he is standing there in front of his Chester drawer. And he had this Bible. That Bible had maybe about an inch of dust on top of it. But he had his Bible sitting there. And I'm just laying across the bed just listening to him argue. And as he's arguing, this man's voice changes. And it says, "I am tired of toiling with you. Your mother's prayers are ever before me. And I will no longer toil with you. From this day forth, you will serve me and me alone." And Joseph picked up that Bible and threw it at me. He threw it at me, but it didn't actually throw. It floated. The Bible floated and hit me in my chest. And I immediately began to speak in tongues. He fell on his knees at the foot of the bed. And when I looked, the room just lit up like the sun had burst into the room. Joe is on his knees. Everything comes to a quiet and the glow comes down. He stood up and he looked around and he started feeling his skin. And he said, "Oh my God, I don't know what this is. I feel so different. I feel so different." And I'm laying there and I'm looking at him and he says, "Oh my God, I don't know. Niecy, do I look different? Do I?" I told him, "No, you don't look any different." He said, "Well, I feel different." And he looked at me, he said, "What was that man's name, that minister, that I said I wanted to sit up under once I gave my life to Christ?" The devil is always warring with us, okay? Now, I was a backslider. And I said to him, "I don't remember." He said, "Yes, you do. You know that minister's name. I know you know his name." And I said, "You're talking about Elder McDaniels." He said, "Yeah, I've got to find that man because that's who I want to sit up under." So we go to bed. I think he slept on the couch. I was in the bed. That morning he got up and he was just running through the house. He couldn't get ready for church fast enough. And I'm just laying there watching him run back and forth and back and forth. And he says, "Babe, get up, get dressed. We're going to church this morning." And I said, "No, I don't think so." He looked at me. He said, "You're not going?" I said, "No." I said, "But you can go on." So he goes into the kitchen, I guess, to make himself a cup of tea or whatever. And he comes back and he looked at me. He said, "You're not going with me?" And I told him, "No." He said, "Oh, well, I'll tell you what." I said, "What?" "When I get back, don't you be here." And he turned and walked off. I thought to myself, He's got his nerves telling me don't. And it dawned on me, you're about to lose the best thing that has ever come into your life. I jumped up and I was just like him, running through the house, trying to get dressed and everything, getting myself together. Got dressed and we get to church. And I remember we sat halfway. Now, I am back with people I grew up with in church. And the altar call was made. And when the altar call was made, Joe jumped up like popcorn. And he is on his way up there. And I'm still sitting there. And on his way, he paused because he realized I wasn't with him. He paused, he turned around and looked at me. And I could hear those words, when I get back, don't you be here. So I stood up. I was, playing it cool. But I stood up and I followed him. We get to the altar and, of course, we give our life to Christ. The minister says to me very nicely, "Oh, young lady, you haven't done that much. God has forgiven you already." Joe turns and looks at me like, "Really?" He looks at Joe and he says to Joe, "And you standing here all arrogant and passing judgment." And I thought to myself, no, don't talk to him like that. He'll leave and he'll never come back. But Joe stayed and gave his life to Christ at that moment. Of course, my girlfriends that I grew up and everything, they come down, they're greeting us, and Joe even knew them. And we're all talking and everything. So needless to say, our life takes a turn to Christ. Very cautious and worried half to death. And I mean, this was a big old man. And he is really concerned. I told him, I said, "Don't worry, we'll be fine." He told me, "Give me one good push." I gave him a good push, and the baby's head was born. And he said, "Carmalita, don't push. Whatever you do, please don't push." I said, "I'm not." He unwrapped the cord from around my baby's neck. It was wrapped 3 times around his throat. And he unwrapped it very carefully, very patiently. And he says, "Carmalita, if you give me one push, we'll have this baby." Gave him one push, and Jonathan was born. I always called God on his word when it came to my children. Call him on his promises, because it said, "Command ye me." And so I would just say, "Now, this is what you said in your word, and this is what I expect for things to happen." So Jonathan was born. No deficits, no anything. Fine and healthy, just a beautiful child. But I'll tell you one thing about Jonathan. Jonathan was light, bright. He looked white, okay? He had these beautiful black eyes and would always grin. Just grin all the time. So when Joe came in to see this baby, he's looking at him and everything, and he's like, "Oh, he's healthy, blah, blah, blah." He's all excited. And he leaves. But I noticed I had an exceptional amount of traffic in and out of my bedroom. And finally, I called one of the nurses that I knew, and I said, "Why does everyone keep coming in and out of my bedroom?" I said, "Normally it's just you." I said, "But I had one nurse this morning, another midday." But I said, "What is going on?" "Well, Mrs. Robinson, it's really," I said, "Why do I have all this traffic traveling in and out of my bedroom?" She went to the door, she looked up and down the hall, and she comes back and she says, "Miss Robinson, have you looked at your baby?" And I looked, I said, "Yes, I've looked at him." "Have you undressed him?" I said, "Yeah." So now I'm concerned. Did I miss something? So I get up and I get to the bassinet and I'm stripping this baby down to look at him. And I said, "Everything is there. And she said, "Miss Robinson, your baby looks white." I said, "He does?" I said, "So what about it?" She said, "Okay, I'm just going to come out and tell you. Everybody thinks that this is Dr. Burstein's baby." I said, "Oh my God." I said, "Why would they think that this baby is Dr. Burstein's?" "Well, he talks to you so peacefully and quietly. He is just so doting over you and Carmelita. Everybody thinks that this is his baby. So I'm thinking, okay, if the nurses think this, what about my husband? And I kept thinking, I said, Lord, does my husband think the same thing? So all day long, I'm wondering, does my husband think the same thing? Hubby comes in that evening, walks over to the bassinet, and he picks his son up and he looks at him and he brings him over to me. And I have him in my arms. And my husband so lovingly bent over, kissed me on my forehead, kissed me on my cheek, kissed me on my lips, and whispers very quietly in my ears, he better change colors. I said, what? He said, Niecy, this baby looks white. I said, Joseph, my mother is light. My father is not that dark. And I'm thinking, I said, oh my God. I said, Lord, this child is going to have to change colors because my husband is now, and I'm thinking, oh my God. So I said, have you looked at his ears? So of course the little ears are kind of, getting a little brown and everything. My son looks just like his daddy. He has his ways. His baby pictures look just like my husband's baby pictures. And my husband came to me and apologized. He said, I'm so sorry. He said, I didn't mean to hurt you. I said, I wasn't hurt. I said, I was concerned that you would think that I would do something like that. He said, honey, I don't know what I was thinking. I just don't. I said, that's okay. I said, but be assured, this is your son. So even now you can look at Jonathan, put my husband's pictures, just that Jonathan is light, but he has every feature of his father. The facial features totally of his father. But the build of his body is like my brother Charles. He has Charles's torso and Charles's big pretty legs. I always thought my brother had big pretty legs, so that's one for you, Charles. But Jonathan is the spitting image of his father.